And I said to them, does that mean I'm better than Abraham Lincoln and George? Well, yes, sir, you're better than both of them.
Hello, today I want to talk a bit about Trump because I think a number of people are quite concerned about his apparent cognitive decline. Indeed, there are plenty of signs that he's not quite all there these days, and considering he's the most powerful man in the world and he's totally unrestrained, that's quite worrying. Now, when he was elected last year for his second term, I remember posting a video at the time saying I didn't think he would last the full 4 years. I'm now absolutely certain that is the case. In fact, I'll be surprised if he lasts more than a few months more, because I think he's really going downhill very, very fast. Now, we know he has all sorts of quirks, I suppose you might say, mental issues. He behaves like a spoiled child. He demands that everyone praises him all the time, and won't be tired if you don't praise him. You're not going to get anywhere. It's the only way you transact with trumpets, to praise him. And we know that he's spiteful and that he's vindictive and he's quite mean, and he doesn't seem to have any empathy. And above all, we know that he's dishonest from his record, and we know that he's a compulsive liar. I mean, he seldom opens his mouth without he's lying. His exaggerations and these constantly repeated lies and exaggerations, I mean, a lot of his followers will believe them. But as I say, he's completely unrestrained. And when it comes to whether or not he's losing his mind, I think a lot of people are beginning to believe that he might have some sort of dementia. And some of the signs quoted are the fact that these days he can barely keep awake in the daytime. He's forever falling asleep. And he's up in the middle of the night posting on Truth Social. One day last week, I think it was last Tuesday, he posted 160 items in 2 hours. That's sort of one a minute almost, and there are all these crazy rants in the middle of the night. And I think the other sign is also that very often he'll be talking about something, in mid-sentence he'll go off on another subject, usually about himself. He'll start talking about something totally unrelated to him, and halfway through he's talking about how great he is. He was asked, for example, about whether or not he was going to attend the funeral of Sarah Beckstrom, the poor girl that was shot in Washington a few weeks ago. And his response was, I haven't really thought about it, but she came from West Virginia, and I did really well in West Virginia. I got more votes in West Virginia than anybody else, any president ever before. And you thought, this is not a sane man. This is a crazy guy. He's asked if he's going to a funeral. He's talking about how well he did in the state the girl came from. And whilst he's forever going on about how great he is, he's surrounded himself by a cabinet of people who are just sycophants. And nobody would dare contradict him or argue with him, because if they do, they get fired. And so he's got all these miserable people telling him how great he is all the time, because that's the only way they keep their jobs. And when you look at the quality of the people in his cabinet, you look at Kennedy, and Secretary of State for Health, who doesn't believe in vaccinations, and you look at Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for Defence, now he's Secretary of State for War, the guy who was previously a radio presenter and a well-known alcoholic. He's the guy who called 1,000 generals and admirals from all over the world to America a few weeks ago to give them a lecture on not getting too fat and doing PE. And then you've got the woman Linda McMahon, who's the Secretary of State for Education. Her main qualification is that she ran the World Wrestling Federation. And you've got that grinning Scott Bessent. I'm not a violent person. I have never hit anybody in my life. I don't think even as a child I ever hit anybody, but I could probably make an exception for that man. He's forever on television, grinning away, telling people that the Americans are not the people who will pay the tariffs. He's saying it even now. He says that, no, what's going to happen is that foreign manufacturers will reduce their prices to compensate for the tariffs. Now, Trump treats everybody as inferior. He is the number one. Everyone else is inferior. Everyone on the planet is inferior, with one exception, and that's Putin. Putin, he somehow or other he's in awe of. It seems pretty obvious that Putin's got something on him. And he seems intimidated by him. He says he trusts him. He thinks he's a reliable guy. And you saw the red carpet when he came to Alaska. And you can see Putin's laughing at him. Putin knows he's got him in the palm of his hand. Now, Putin is a monstrous little rat, a horrible man, an evil man. He's responsible for probably 1 million or more deaths as a result of his invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign state. He's caused billions of dollars worth of damage. Look at Mariupol. Remember when that was destroyed? He's even now sending missiles to civilian areas and killing civilians almost every day. He's a guy who, if you oppose him in Russia, you end up falling out of a high-story building onto concrete, and that's the end of you. Or you get shot in the street. Putin's the guy who sent an assassin to the UK to kill Alexander Litvinenko. He sent assassins to kill the Skripals in Salisbury. And that poor woman died as a result of being contaminated by whatever they'd left behind. He's a terrible, terrible, evil man. But Trump thinks he's okay. He's okay. He thinks he can trust him, can do business with him. Now, it seems that America is going to sort out the wars. There's yet another war he wants to finish, to add to the 80 he claims he's already ended. And so talks were arranged. Now, if you have talks to end a war, you're going to send your really top diplomats. You're going to spend somebody who's been in the diplomatic corps for 20, 30 years, a real top dog, somebody who's really expert and understands politics and geopolitics and so on. And you're going to send that person with a whole team of experts to back them up and so on. And so a meeting was arranged with Putin to discuss the ending of the war in Ukraine, and who went along? Not a top experienced diplomat with a whole gang of supporters. No. Sent his mate, his golfing mate, a New York estate agent or property developer, billionaire, Steve Witkoff. Little Steve. Steve's had 4 or 5 meetings with Putin, and he likes him. He thinks he's a nice man. And you might have seen film when Steve arrives. He arrives on his own. Doesn't take an interpreter. He doesn't take anyone to take notes. No record is kept of his side of the discussions. And little Steve, he arrives and he puts his hand on his heart when he meets Putin, as if to say, we're friends, aren't we? Putin sits there with that sort of that snarling grin that he has on his face sometimes. He must be laughing his socks off that Trump has sent this idiotic estate agent to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. It emerged from the Russians at some stage that Steve, Trump's golfing buddy, had been teaching the Russians how to speak to Trump in order to get a good response from him, how they had to butter him up and flatter him and so on. A couple of meetings ago, Steve came back and he brought with him a list, which apparently the Russians had written. It was confirmed afterwards that the Russians had produced this list of their demands. Demands like Ukraine should never join NATO, that Russia should keep all of the territory they've so far illegally conquered, plus a load more land, and that Ukraine should never build an army big enough to be of any effect or to be able to compete with the Russians. In other words, set everything up for further invasion later down the road in a few years' time. Steve came back with this was his negotiated contract. Of course, it was ridiculous and it didn't go anywhere. So last week, Steve went back with Jared Kushner, the sort of Taylor's dummy with the plastic face, the guy who got the Saudis when his father-in-law, Trump, his father-in-law, did some deal with the Saudis, and Jared got $2 billion to invest. And you have to say to yourself, you've got two property people negotiating the end of a war with Ukraine. I mean, it's pretty obvious to anybody what they're negotiating is deals, or the right to negotiate deals to rebuild Ukraine. These guys are there to do business, to make money. You don't send estate agents or property developers to negotiate the end of a war. It's a bit like in the Second World War. If America, instead of coming in and coming in on our side and fighting the Germans, if they just sent somebody over and said, "Look, we won't support the British if you'll let us do some property deals." I mean, it's obscene, isn't it? Anyway, incidentally, Jared Kushner's father, he was sent to prison for 2 years for tax evasion, but I think Trump pardoned him. Now, on the other side of the world, in Venezuela, things have been happening. Trump says he wants to overthrow Maduro, who admittedly doesn't seem to be a very nice character, and he's probably not very popular. But he wants to overthrow him in order to help the Venezuelan people. And also he wants to stop drugs coming in from Venezuela into America. And so what he's done, apart from making the whole of Venezuela a no-fly zone, whereby it's very difficult to get to Venezuela now, what they've been doing is they've been bombing little boats in the sea off Venezuela. Now, these are all quite small boats, and nobody has any idea as to what they're carrying. They're boats that, if they were to get to America, would need to refuel 5 times on the way. So they're unlikely to be smuggling drugs. But nonetheless, Trump claims that they are smuggling drugs. And so they've just been destroying all these boats. And last week they dropped a bomb on one of these boats, and it smashed it to pieces. And there were nine people were killed, and 2 guys were clean to the wreckage. And the order was given, it's said by Pete Hegseth, though that's yet to be absolutely confirmed. I think CNN have got a lot of footage and so on that does show that he might well have been responsible for giving the order. But the order was given to kill these 2 guys, in other words, to murder them. And so they're murdering people, they're blowing up boats where they have no idea whether or not there are any drugs in them. And Trump says that this is to stop the drugs coming from Venezuela into America. Trump has said time and time again that had those boats got through, they would have killed 25,000 Americans each. They were carrying enough drugs to kill 25,000 Americans each. That's 125,000. He says it. 25. He says by each time they destroy a boat, they save 25,000 American lives. So he's claiming that with those 5 boats, they've saved 125,000 American lives, people who would have died from drugs. Now, Venezuela is responsible for very, very little drug smuggling into America. The vast majority is fentanyl, which comes through from China via Mexico. And that's responsible for the vast majority of drug deaths. But the total number of people who've died as a result of drugs in America for the last 2 years has been 110,000 a year. So this idea that each of those boats was going to kill 25,000 Americans and he saved 25,000 is just utter madness. And again, it's very obvious this whole thing is almost certainly so as he can get hold of Venezuela's oil. I mean, Venezuela has some of the biggest oil reserves in the world. And presumably the idea is get rid of Maduro, put in a puppet government, and then no doubt Kushner and Witkoff will be down there doing deals to buy the oil, or to drill for the oil. And whilst he says that he's doing this in order to stop drugs coming into America, there's a guy you'll have heard about, I'm sure, called Juan Orlando Hernandez, and he was the president of Honduras. And it was discovered that he was involved in smuggling cocaine into America. He was working with El Chapo, the famous drug lord. And after a huge investigation, which must have cost an awful lot of money, he was found guilty of being involved in smuggling 400 tons of cocaine into America, and he was sent to prison for 45 years. And in the same week that they've been bombing these Venezuelan fishing boats, this guy Hernandez was released. He walked free from prison because Trump said he thought he'd been unfairly treated. Now, whether or not any money changed hands, who knows? And then, as if this madness isn't enough, there's the economy, which, thanks to the tariffs and other things, is not doing very well. Trump, who in many ways is quite clever, he's certainly very streetwise, and is a fantastic communicator, but in some ways he's pretty stupid. I think he's blinded by his own self-love. But he thought that applying tariffs to every country in the world, except Russia and Belarus, he thought somehow or other that countries would become begging for deals, and very few have come begging for deals. But he was stupid enough to think that he could push China around, put them in their place. And one thing that you're never ever going to do, especially now that they're so strong, is to push China around. And of course, China responded by stopping buying soybeans, which cost the American economy a great deal, because they were huge buyers of soybean. They're now buying them from Argentina and Brazil, or I think they're buying a few from America now. But what the Chinese did do, which was quite clever, they just said, they control the vast majority, 95% plus of the important rare earths. They said, well, we're not going to supply you anymore. And these rare earth metals are needed for car magnets and for all sorts of high tech, and for computers and phones and military and all sorts. And they're really absolutely vital these days. So China have really got Trump in a bit of a spot there, and I think he's going to have to go and do some sort of deal. I believe he's going to China soon anyway, so presumably he'll be going cap in hand. But the economy is in a terrible mess anyway, and it's doing very badly. I think there have been over 1 million layoffs in the 11 months that Trump has been president, and the cost of living is going up and up and up. Not least because the cost of fruit and vegetables and so on has gone up because they got rid of all the migrant workers, and the same problem we've got in the UK. And things like, for example, tourism is down. It's down apparently 12.5 billion this year, which is an awful lot of money, 12.5 billion. I saw a video of Las Vegas. It was filmed at 10 o'clock on the Strip a few weeks ago, and there was just nobody there, absolutely deserted. I mean, it's a terrible crisis there. But I mean, who's going to go? Who in their right minds is going to go to America now? I mean, there are even instances of innocent tourists being arrested by these ICE people. And the shortage of workers in agriculture and construction is going to be an ongoing problem. And there's no evidence of manufacturing moving back. There never was likely to be, because to start manufacturing in a country which has not been manufacturing for decades and decades and decades, it's very difficult and expensive and long term. And who's going to risk investing any money right now? And the tech companies, the big seven, what do they call them? There's a name for them anyway. The 7 big tech companies, which account now for 35% of the S&P 500, a huge proportion of the American economy, and these are all working on AI, which is going to start destroying jobs, and that's going to be another huge problem coming up next year. Already there are driverless taxis in a number of cities in America, and that's just going to grow and grow and grow. I mean, what taxi operator is going to employ drivers if they can use driverless cars? And it'll spread throughout all sorts of industries. So that's going to be another problem for the economy coming up very soon. At the same time, people have lost their health cover, and they must be. Many people are going to die because of that. People either can't afford it, or it's taking so much of their money that they haven't got any money to spend in the rest of the economy. So things look set to get worse and worse and worse. And the person who's going to get the blame for all this is Trump. And considering that his ratings now are the lowest of any president at this stage since records began, he's extremely, extremely unpopular. And he's bound to, for the reasons I've just given, he's bound to continue to get more and more unpopular. And yet, when people look around and they see how he's suffering, how they're suffering, how they're struggling and so on, and they look at how Trump is accumulating billions, and all the people around him are accumulating billions and billions and billions. I mean, think of this Ukraine deal, and in due course, as I said, the Venezuelan deal. These are guys, Witkoff and Kushner and Trump. They're already billionaires. I mean, how much money do they need? How much money do they have to have? This greed is insane greed. And they look at Trump and they see him spending £300 million on this mini Versailles, which is going to just ruin the White House. And they see that every week he goes to Mar-a-Lago, and that costs £3 million a time because he takes that great big Air Force One. I saw a film the other day of him travelling from the airport, wherever it is that he arrives in Florida, going to his Mar-a-Lago. He had a procession of 12 of those big black cars full of security people. What is all that costing? What are they doing when they're waiting to escort him a few miles to his house? When they see this waste, this extravagance, it's complete lack of consideration for other people's feelings, and lack of interest really in how everybody else is living, except to keep saying that things have never been better. And then, as I said before, he's found to be posting on Truth Social. What a ridiculous name, Truth Social. 160 times in one night, ranting about Obama and Clinton and James Comey, the former boss of the FBI, who he wanted to take to court, and the court threw him out, and going on about Sleepy Joe. I mean, Trump is asleep every day, and he's the guy who coined the phrase and used it over and over again about Sleepy Joe. And one of these tweets, of this 160 tweets, he retweeted a tweet saying that Nancy Pelosi, she's 85 years old, she was the former Speaker for a very long time of the House of Representatives, very distinguished politician in America. He said, he repeated this tweet, this posting, saying that she, 85-year-old Nancy Pelosi, had spent 2 years planning the 6th of January insurgency. This is loopy. This is just a crazy guy. But if you want proof that he's crazy, just listen to this. I'll leave you with this. 6 Democratic lawmakers, 2 senators and 4 members of Congress, all military veterans, all distinguished military veterans. So they made a video because they were concerned about the fact that Trump is sending troops all around the place to different cities to take over, because he says they're all lawless. Remember, it happened in Washington and Los Angeles and Chicago and a number of places. Well, these Democrat lawmakers, they were concerned about this because they thought it's not really legal what they're doing, and that forces should know that if they follow an order which is telling them to do something illegal, they should know that they are responsible. So they made this little video saying, if you're told to do something that's illegal, don't do it because you'll be in trouble. And so Trump obviously didn't like this very much. So this is what he said. He tweeted, he said, it's called seditious, this is in capitals, seditious behaviour at the highest level. Each one of these traitors, he's referring to the politicians, each one of these traitors to our country should be, and then in capital letters, arrested and put on trial. No, that wasn't enough. So a little bit later on, he tweeted again. He said, this is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. And then all in capital letters, seditious behaviour from traitors, 4 exclamation marks. Lock them up, 4 question marks. President DJT. And even that wasn't enough. So a bit later on, he posted another one. He says in capital letters, seditious behaviour, punishable by death. He then later on reposted another statement saying, hang them, George Washington would. Double exclamation marks. That's the most powerful man in the world, who in response to politicians warning troops that they shouldn't do things, follow orders that are involved in doing something illegal, thinks they should be tried and put to death. Guy's bonkers. As I say, I don't think he's going to last. It may be his health, it may be the fact that there'll be an uprising because everyone is suffering so much in America, and they see the corruption that's going on, they see the money that this man is accumulating, the way he's living, the way he's behaving, and it could well be that things will blow up, but he can't last. The guy is crazy. Anyway, that's what I think about it. If you watch this far, thank you very much indeed. And if you haven't already subscribed, I would appreciate it if you do so. And so until next time, thank you for watching, and bye for now.